William Lucy was Secretary-Treasurer of AFSCME from 1972 to 2010. He and Council 28 had a long bond. He was first nominated for Secretary-Treasurer of AFSCME at the 1972 International Convention by Norm Scott, Council 28's Executive Director at the time. Council 28 nominated him every 4 years ever since. Bill Lucy came to work for the International Union in 1966 after 13 years as president of Local 1675 in Contra Costa, California. He has held, and still does hold, a number of offices, all advocating for the rights of workers in America and all across the world. A native of Memphis, Bill Lucy was assigned by AFSCME to work with Dr. King on the fateful final campaign for decent treatment of that city's sanitation workers. Quite simply, Bill Lucy is our friend. So please give him an enthusiastic Council 28.
Coming to 28 is like coming home. I see Council 28 in its leadership, its membership. We have been so many places together on so many causes. And I was fortunate enough to watch you guys transition to this great union that you are now. And I feel so proud to have been asked to come by and spend a few moments with you. I'll tell you a quick story. Norm nominated me in 1972 in Houston, Texas. And neither one of us knew what was going to happen when he did that. But it was such an incredible experience with that convention to be nominated by such a leader of this union as Norm Scott. And we remained friends for all those years, and all the subsequent executive directors up to it, including Greg. We've just all been sort of one big family. Now, the election went good in Houston. Everything worked out. And I was so sort of overcome last day. My first visit to the convention was going to be to Washington State, to 28. And so your convention came shortly after that. And I was invited to come by, and I did. And we were in a hospitality room. Some of you old timers might remember. But there was one incredibly nice lady there who was so happy to see me. And we said hello, and she barfed right in the chest. For you guys who were hunters, it was a nice, tight pattern. But she had some interesting things earlier in the evening. So I always remember 28 as the beginning and almost the end. But every time and whenever I'm invited, I intend to participate in Council 28's convention because I feel that strongly about our relationship over all these years.
All right.
Members of the board, the elected officers, I thank you as always for continuing to support the agenda that our union laid out for itself 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago. The need to fight on behalf of members of our union, the service that we perform, and the quality of life that we impact is what I consider to be sort of a mission of our union. And I am always trying to do that. I would like, if you would allow me, to spend a few minutes talking about a lady. I was out here about 4 weeks ago, at an awards dinner, sort of speaking to the role that Althea Burton Luke had played, not just in our union, but in our movement. Most of you know Althea, and you know she was one of the kind and gentle souls, reserved. That night I said that Althea would also knock you out. But in our movement, certainly in the CBTU, we miss her, as I'm sure you do. So I want to just share with you some thoughts this evening. I want to talk to you outside of your official role as leaders of the union, as officers of the union. I just want to talk to you as neighbors, as folks who are concerned about what's happening across the country in so many different places. And see if we can't figure out how we, as individuals, can help other folks understand what's taking place. I mean, what's happening is not an accident of nature. What's happening is an organized effort to make it virtually impossible for us to continue the kind of life we're trying to build for ourselves and the quality of that life. And I want to contrast it to what we sometimes see as the nation's outpouring of spirit, so to speak. A few weeks ago, thousands of people, as I said the other night, gathered in Washington, D.C. We gathered for a very unique occasion that was to sort of bring a monument on the Mall. Those of you who have been to Washington, D.C. know on the Mall is a monument to everything other than average people. It's about war, it's about violence, it's about a lot of stuff. But for the first time, a monument was being placed as a testimony to someone who worked on behalf of average people to remove violence, and poverty, and deprivation. So people were there for this event. And then along came Irene. And people did what they should have done. They ran for governor. So on the 16th of this month, that event is being done over again. But it's the placement of a monument dedicated to a man whose life was a struggle for human rights, workers' rights, and civil rights, a struggle to end poverty among all people, but gave such a tremendous sacrifice on behalf of this union. What's the crazy guy? Glenn Beck. Said that King's presence in Memphis, Tennessee had nothing to do with the conflict between the sanitation workers and the city of Memphis. Which means that he is one of the most uninformed people I have ever seen. One of the most diabolical liars I've ever heard. The presence of King in Memphis sort of verified the fact that he was more than a civil rights worker. He was a workers' rights advocate, and an advocate for quality of life for people that this country had made promises to and about. And it was tough for us who had strike responsibility to see this tragedy because there was so much more work to be done. But he gave his life for this union, and this union ought to always be respectful of and advocate on behalf of the causes that he fought for. Well,
amen.
We as workers, we as employees of the states and counties and cities in Washington State, we know that human rights, workers' rights, civil rights are probably the three most important and powerful elements in a civilized society. And that if they exist, our life could be so much better. If they don't exist, it's hard to tell how imposed upon us we are by the forces that control our lives. In this nation, the richest nation on the face of the earth, those things do not exist in law. They exist by chance. They exist by happenstance. If you're rich enough, well-educated, politically connected, you can enjoy that. But heaven forbid if you are an ordinary worker, trying to make it on a day-to-day basis, have no money, have no politically connected friend, you are catching hell unlike anything we've seen before. We see it every day across this country. Dr. King's life was dedicated to the struggle to achieve these rights for all people. There were folks who think, well, Dr. King is just a civil rights advocate. Well, the life of African Americans across the South was such that you had to struggle to change things short of an armed revolution. The only way you could do it was show the contradiction between what the law says and how it acts towards all of us people. So I, for one, am proud to have known, proud to have had the opportunity to work with, and certainly proud to have been a part of that tremendous struggle on behalf of 1,300 sanitation workers in Memphis, Tennessee. This great outpouring on the 16th. Folks from all walks of life and all stations in life will talk about what a great man Dr. King was and what a great mission he carried on. And frankly, I marvel at the hypocrisy of the rich and the powerful. And while they try to seem like they may be in sync with the goals and objectives of Dr. King or any of us, on a daily basis they use their power to implement everything that he fought against. And this comes about not because people inherit a gene, it's just the nature of rich and powerful people to impose their power on others. That happens to be us. I always say there are two kinds of people in our society, the powerful and the powerless. And you can generally tell which group you're in. Because the powerful have things done for them. The powerless have things done to them. And unless we come together as a family, we will always be in that kind of situation. There's an old saying, and it's as true today as it was whenever it was first said, that elections have consequences. And we are living with the consequences of a recent election. And you would think that there would be enough money and enough power and enough influence to satisfy a lot of people. But apparently the rich has an insatiable appetite for everything. They have a need for power beyond any that they would want to exercise or use. And it's funny that it's always on somebody who's on the bottom of the ladder. If the rich fought with the rich, that would be cool as far as I'm concerned. But they want to fight with folks who are struggling just to get by. Every statistics you look at now points to the decline of the middle class. Decline in general for the middle class and a decline in the quality of life of just everyday working people. I run into people who are working one job, two jobs, three jobs, some cases 4 jobs, where the husband and the wife never see each other hardly at the same time, never see the children together. I mean, we are, it seems to me, a better nation than that.
That's right.
I was stopped once in Ohio by a young lady who was a school bus driver, whose salary just let her exist from month to month. There were no weekend activities. There was nothing special for the kids. It was just exist. Well, I just happen to think that as the richest nation in the world, the overwhelming majority of our people ought not be just existing.
That's right.
We ought to have something better in store. Over the past 5-6 years, the income of the top 5% of our folks have gone up by 48%. while the salaries of you and us has barely moved at all. If it moved, it was eaten up by some other increase in something else. We just, in some cases, it's going down. You're absolutely right. So doesn't that seem out of kilter? Doesn't that something seem wrong with that? Poverty has increased by 16%. We almost had poverty down to a manageable level. It's going up again. Child poverty is on the rise. And our people are frustrated. I mean, we work hard every day. We play by the rules. We do as we have always believed we should do. Yet we can't get ahead. I mean, we're scrambling just trying to stay even. And they're frustrated as they should be. For us and our members, we understand. We understand the assault on us here in Washington State and across the country have a lot to do with other things other than the work that we do. It may have something to do with the fact that we're a powerful organization, that we fight for our members and at the same time fight for our communities. I understand their plan and I understand their strategy to end our voice in the workplace so that we are not there to speak for members of this union or members in our society. I understand that their effort is to end workers' rights to form their own union. I understand and believe very strongly that they do not want us to continue to bargain collectively. They don't want us to have a voice in the workplace. And they don't, I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said. Yeah, well, we're here to stay. Trust me on that. We're here to stay. And in a strange way, I want to express my appreciation to the temporary governor, Scott Walker, of Wisconsin. Because he finally at least had the honesty to say what this is all about. He made it clear this is a song that's not about budget reform or deficit reduction or anything else, but an effort to break or undermine our unions and count on the anxiety and the frustration of the American people to help them do it. Our people are frustrated, and justifiably so. We're faced now with long-term unemployment, where you're discriminated against the longer you've been out of work.
Amen.
What's the logic of that? But if you've been out of work longer than 2 years, you're going to play hell trying to get another job right away.
Amen.
Record levels of personal and business bankruptcies, home foreclosures. We know, you know this as well as I do, but these are not happening in isolation. These are all a part of a much larger, I could never believe that people would be so mean as to punish the country to get rid of one person.
That's right.
I need to say that again. Punish the entire country because they want to get rid of one person. We see the greatest inequity in income, wages and wealth in the industrial world, and it's designed to get higher and larger. We see 1% of the rich and wealthy owns 30% of the wealth of this nation. There's just something wrong with that. 1% brings in 20% of the income in a 12-month period. And there's nothing wrong with being rich. I suspect every one of us would want to be rich. But why then, if you've got access to all that you can possibly use, you want to punish those who are struggling to survive? Those are the two philosophies that are at war right now. The top 10% of our folks are better off than the bottom 50%. When I say this, people say, well, you just want to stop class warfare. Yeah.
That's right. That's good. That's good. Amen.
About these kinds of disparities and differences. We're all familiar with the process by which you divide people into neat little packages, boxes and squares. You draw on those things that they fear the most You use the divisive tactics that set one group against another, so they never come together and think about their own interests. I used to marvel when I used to see President Reagan. He took out this letter out of his pocket that he had gotten from somebody, and he says he had this welfare recipient who bought a bottle of vodka with food stamps, and that's the reason we got this problem. Wow, come on. Now, we've got a problem because there is a lack of concern for neighbors. There's a lack of concern for someone who is not as well off as I am.
That's right.
There's a feeling that I've got mine, you get yours. There's a feeling that everybody could do well if they just wanted to. And if God had intended you to be rich, he would have you born that way. Yet, the rich and wealthy never worked a single day in their life and have all the wealth they need. And yet, many of us struggle every single day and cannot get ahead. So to keep us confused, they said region against region, black against white, brown against this. And we spend our time worrying about the petty peeps we may have with each other as opposed to who's driving to the bank with all of the wealth that we need to have a decent country. This has been a real experience. In 2008, we started to think about, can't this thing be different? Can't there be change? Young people, older people, folks that simply want a secure future. We decided, okay, let's allow that little crazy stuff aside. And let's go down to the polls and let's vote, elect somebody who we think can change things. And we did. We elected President Obama. We knew it was going to be difficult because we didn't get in the shape we were in overnight. But we did not even begin to believe it would be as difficult as it is, where every state, county, city is struggling just to get its budget in a way where it can deliver service. But I marvel at the fact that all of the solutions involve balancing it on our back. All of the solutions start first with a reduction in our benefits, a reduction in our wages, a reduction in our hours. And at the same time, nobody ever asked the rich to contribute anything to maintain or improve in the quality of life in a nation that allows them to be rich and wealthy. We should not be surprised by the assault on us, because we're the only line of defense left. The trade union movement is the first line of offense and the last line of defense.
We're not going nowhere.
Yeah, she said, nowhere. We're going to try and organize ourselves so we can play out the political role that we have to play out and play out the representational role that we must play out to protect not just our members, but all of those that we serve. A few days ago, something very interesting happened in New York. And I sort of watch these movements, try to figure out what's going on, but this was incredibly interesting. It's interesting for its simplicity. People gathered on Wall Street, which is the hideout of the great thieves of our nation. It's remarkable in its simplicity, and remarkable in the fact that it focused on those who generated and benefited from the processes that set the stage for our economic disaster. Those who made boatloads of money, while the 99% of us really tried to figure out how to dodge this tsunami that was coming at us. I can't help but be thankful for the young kids and whoever it is that's on Wall Street and many other cities around this country, because they are raising the question that needs to be raised. What is fairness? How can only a few have so much while so many of us are just trying to survive? And it's not like we want the government to regulate their money. We just want them to pay their fair share. I mean, there's something wrong with the government who can earn $400 million and pay less tax than any one of us. There's something wrong with that. We got the corporations, many of which we own stock, who refuse to hire. So they are uncertain about the future. Well, so are we. And our future is tied to a job. You got the banks who we bailed out, saying they will not loan. We got the rich who said they ain't gonna pay another nickel into nothing. And then we've got their bought and paid for politicians in Congress who refuses to even consider asking them to pay something on the running of this country. You know, I'm of the opinion that we ought to put on a fatigue suit on them and drag them to the hills of Afghanistan or Iraq. Put a gun in their hand and make them fight. And make them fight to protect the country and allow them to be. I mean, what is this all about? This morning, I don't know if any of you saw Fox and Friends this morning. I watch it just so I can get up angry. Guy says, well, the people who are screaming about foreclosures just don't understand. Well, I don't. How can that be? I mean, we are continuing to pay the mortgage on homes that are worth less now than we owe them. We understand that. We continue to pay our bills for everything that we purchase, our kids' education. We know that it's getting harder and harder. What the hell is it that we don't understand? Well, we understand clearer and clearer that this is a us and them relationship. And that unless we fight back, we will go right down the sewer. All of us in this room do jobs that the public thinks need doing. We try to do them as best we can with the quality we can do it. Yeah? The appreciation for it here in this state. You guys have saved this state more than once. Both for the quality of work and the quantity of work. Some of us do jobs that you couldn't get somebody in the private sector to do. You know, at the World Trade Center, firemen were going up the stairs, while the banking crowd was going down the stairs.
Yeah.
Firemen never came back down. Now, could you privatize that and ask them to gauge how much they ought to earn per hour in order to risk their lives on a daily basis? No. We do it because we believe in public service. We do it because we believe that there's a future in public service. Now, we're not going to get rich, we know that. But we ought to be able to do our job without being beat upon by elected officials, by being absolutely disrespected by folks who are responsible for it. Just let us do our job. Give us a fair salary for what we do. And when you look at all of this, you try to figure out what is it that motivates the corporate community just to refuse to participate. You know, their money. Well, let me go back a ways. I was watching TV one evening, and I saw our former president in India saying what a good idea it was to privatize good-paying jobs, moving from this economy to third world countries. Good idea. And then the corporations, you know, they thought it was a good idea too, because it takes the high-paid employees out of the corporate economy. It saves the wages and benefits. They can turn that into profit, produce consumer goods offshore, pay not a nickel of tax on those profits that are made in the international economy. And then when we say something about it, well, you know, it's class warfare. Well, you know, if you use our subsidies to enhance your business overseas, you make a profit, you ought to bring the profit back here. And you can fair amount back. So we lose the jobs, we lose production capacity, We got auto workers now, who more of their members are in parts than they are in assembly. The auto workers, who used to be a union of a million or more folks, have more members, as I said, in parts. Cut their wages 30 or 40%, eliminated benefits that they'd held for years, and simply said, that's the way it is. Well, they always tell us a contract is a contract. If we negotiate benefits, those benefits ought to stand until the next contract and ought not be unilaterally changed by the employer or judicially changed by judges. We are entitled to get the benefits that we negotiate and the conditions of the contracts that we negotiated in. That's simple. And we're living with the product of the 80s, where profitable companies were bought up, sold off in pieces, along with the livelihoods of thousands and thousands of workers whose careers had been with those companies. We had mergers, consolidations, buyouts. And at the end of the day, so much money went up and so many lives turned down. That's our responsibility to fight against as a union. It's our responsibility to fight against it as a people. How can we hold up this country in terms of its freedoms and its liberties, and yet people in this country are living in the conditions that a third world country is forced to live in? We got people who work every single day, and yet hunger and poverty exist in their families. Maybe it's me. Maybe I grew up in Richmond, California, and therefore we're different. But there's something wrong. There's something wrong when people refuse to share what they have gained off the backs of us with us. So as AFSCME prepares to fight and the FLCIO prepares to fight, we've got to be fighting on, it seems to be, the right issues. We get diverted sometimes, we get lost in the weeds. We didn't lose, as I said a few weeks ago, 3 million jobs because my brother-in-law decided he wanted to be my sister-in-law. We lost them because somebody made a conscious decision to take our jobs somewhere else. We get to argue over things that make very little sense. I'm convinced that as long as they teach algebra and geometry, trigonometry, we're going to have prayer in school. We're not even lost on the relevance of some things. While we're arguing about irrelevant issues, the crowd with the power is still driving to the bank with every piece of profit that can be drawn from this society. So, Council 28 and your affiliated unions, we've got to figure out how we put together a plan to attack all of those who are trying to divide us up. In Phoenix, Arizona, we're bringing as many groups as we can together so that we don't get caught in this one crowd versus the other crowd. All of us, whether we came over on different ships, we're in the same boat now. And supplement the work of the Federation. We're going to try and see how we train our activists on the issues that are centerpiece of the discussion, so that when we knock on people's door, we can give them an intelligent response to the issues that are on the table. In the neighborhood I grew up in, people don't respond to TV ads. They respond to somebody knocking on that door and having a conversation with them about an important issue that's going to be on the ballot. We're going to try and talk about jobs and the need for them. We're going to try and talk about economic policy, which normally nobody discusses with average working people. And we're going to talk about, and folks may have a different opinion, but we're going to talk about national health care and the need for a stronger national health care system. Right now, I guess a couple of years ago when we passed it, we had 46 million people with no access to quality health care. We now probably got about 10 million more. Whatever we got now is not adequate. What we need is national health care, single payer, so we can do the job. So that's what we're trying to do. And we're hopeful and thankful that, as always, Council 28 and its locals will be having us do all that we can do. I, again, just want to say thank you, Carol, for inviting me to come by and say a few words with you and share a few ideas with you. Thank you.
So President Lucy, before you leave, I'd just like to let you know that Council 28 is sending 5 people to Arizona to join you there. I just want to quickly make a couple of announcements before we get started back again. You know, we're having the rally, and I'm expecting all of you there. And people have been asking, where are we getting shirts and signs? They'll be at the registration table, and pins and buttons, and you can get them before 4 p.m. The buses will be out on the breezeway at the horseshoe to the left, where a lot of you were dropped off this morning. And those buses are the ones that are going to take you to the rally this afternoon, where we're going to stand up. Are we, brothers and sisters?
There you go.
So I'm told there was a steward raffle, and it looks like Melanie Robinson has won $25. And I'm not sure if it's Jane Ann or Janine LaCasa. You've won $50. Congratulations. So we'll go back to committee reports. I'd like to call Constitution and Bylaws Committee B back up.
Thank you. Did you hand where's your card?
Only thing is, I didn't get no pictures.
So those of you who did not win the last 2 rounds of money, don't throw those tickets away. And those of you who saw people already throw their tickets away, run for the garbage cans, because there's more to come.
You are going to be here with us for a little bit, right? Yeah. And I have one. That's good. I don't know how to make it.
All right, brothers and sisters, would you get out your blue booklet, please? And take a look at Constitutional Amendment 3. Committee report.
We're back. Okay, everybody.
Come on.
We're on
I got it. She paid me to your
Constitutional
honor
Amendment.
for half an hour.
Therefore, be it resolved that Article
Another picture of Bill?
representing Section 4 of the Constitution
I got it.
Lucy, Council 28, AFSCME, County Municipal Employees, AFSCME, be amended as follows.
Let's go out of the
Section 4.
Like a rock star.
2 or 3 local unions may unite in sending a delegate to the biennial convention or special meeting of the council, provided such delegate is a member in good standing in accordance with section 2 of this article of 1 such local
My camera.
union. Said delegate shall be entitled to the votes to which the local unions so represented are entitled in accordance with section 1 of the charter. No delegate shall represent more than 3 locals.
Which way you gonna take it? Which way you gonna take it? About this door?
So the committee recommends a yes vote.
You know you're not gonna get him out quick. We want to keep him.
Constitutional Amendment 3 is before you, the committee recommendation. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of this amendment, please say aye. Opposed, say no.
Somebody take the picture. Who's taking the picture? I'm not taking the picture.
We're now moving to Constitutional Amendment number 4.
Constitutional Amendment number 4, Article 14, nomination and election of other members of the executive board.
You're the real sergeant at arms. So you the man.
I will read the resolve. Therefore, be it resolved that Article 8, representation, Section 4 of the Constitution of the Washington Federation of State Employees, Council 28 of the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, AFL.
There goes the next set. We hit it right over here.
If you ever feel like sending it,
Article 4, nomination and election of other members of the executive board.
That's a bunch of roses
All
in the
policy
corner.
committees and 28 board members shall be nominated.
Mario, you have to tell me how to take. How do you take a picture with this thing? I don't have my camera.
Within 60 days after the adjournment
Okay.
of the October 2000.
I don't know. It's on tape now, so somebody have to edit it.
That's okay. That's good.
Okay.
Members of any
All right. Everybody good, smiling good. It's good. Thank you.
agencies comprising the policy committee shall be eligible to be nominated and elected, provided the nominees have been members in good standing for 1 year prior to the election. The committee recommends a no vote.
She gonna
It's been moved and seconded.
find out where
Is
he's
there
gonna
any
be.
discussion? Seeing none, all those. I see. I was waiting. Brother, like one.
Somebody told me that you were welcome this.
Hello, Guy Boyle Dodson, Department of Ecology, 443. Is this not indeed the same kind of thing that we just voted against previously in those other amendments? I would suggest it's the same thing and that we vote against it. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers on this? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.